Okay, gentlemen, so this is the first Mishna of Perek Beis, reviewing what we did in class today and going forward. You should read along. Haya Kaira B'Torah. Somebody was reading in the Torah. V'higiya Zman HaMikra, and the time came for reciting. Meaning what? Reciting the Shema. So we're talking about in the morning. Someone got up early and they're learning Torah. Happened to be in Parshas Veschanan, where the Shema and the V'ahavta are. And along came the time where now the obligation to say Shema has arrived. So what happens if he's reading? Does he automatically fulfill the mitzvah? Or does he have to know in his mind that he's doing the mitzvah on purpose? Right? That's really the question. In kiven liboy, if he intended his heart, yatsa, he goes out of his obligation, meaning he's yotzi, meaning he fulfilled the mitzvah. Okay, so every time you see that word yatsa, you have to think about the whole concept of fulfilling a mitzvah, going out from the obligation that is upon you. Next line, v'im lav, and if not, meaning, and if he did not have kavana in his mind, in his heart, that he was actually doing this mitzvah on purpose, he just happens to be reading, then, lo yatsa, he has not gone out, meaning he has not gone out of his obligation, he has not fulfilled the mitzvah. So the basic point here is that to fulfill the mitzvah of Shema, of Kriyas Shema, it's not enough just to say it. We have to have kavanah. We have to know that we're doing this as a mitzvah. You have to do it on purpose in your mind. Aside from being in the right time and all the other things we already talked about. Next section. Baprakim, which we're going to translate as in between paragraphs. Literally, baprakim, in the prakim. You guys know Perek means a chapter or a section, right? So when you see this word, you might think, is it in the chapters or is it in between the chapters? You're going to see in the following Mishnayos that we mean in between the different sections of the Shema. So when we say baprakim here, we're going to talk about that as in between the different sections, in between the different paragraphs of the Shema. So, baprakim, in between the paragraphs, shoyel mipnei hakavod umeshiv. Shoyel, you know, means he asks, which in this case means he asks somebody, how are you? Which means he greets someone, right? How are you going to greet someone? You're in the middle of Shema, right? Mipnei hakavod, because of honor. Because it's someone that you have an obligation to honor, right? Umeshiv, and he responds. So that whole line, shoyel mipnei hakavod umeshiv. He asks because of honor, umeshiv, and he can also answer. So this is, for example, if your father walks in, right, into shul, and you were already in shul, and, you know, you're supposed to show respect. You say, you know, hello, father. And if he says to you, hello, sweetie, you respond, hi, you know. So according to the Mishnah, you're allowed to do that. Now, whether or not we actually do that is another question that we'll talk more about. But the point here is, shoyel mipnei hakavod umeshiv. Because of honor, you can greet, and also you can respond to a greeting. Right? Next line, uva emtza, and in the middle of one of the sections, in the middle of one of the paragraphs, not in between, but in the middle of one, right? You're in the middle of saying it, then it says, shoyel mipnei hayira umeshiv. Then he can greet only because of fear, umeshiv, and also you can respond to a greeting. So in this case, right, we're not talking about someone you'd have an obligation to honor, like your Rebbe or a parent or an elder, but this is fear, like, you know, the king walks in, or a soldier walks in, or a bad guy who's your enemy, and you know he's out to get whatever, something like this. You're actually afraid for your physical safety. In that case, right, we respond even in the middle. Even in the middle. Say hello, good morning. Right? Last line, Divrei Rabbi Meir. These are the words of Rabbi Meir. This whole thing we just said, are the words of Rabbi Meir. This whole thing of Ba Prakim, okay? This is the opinion of Rabbi Meir. Now, the next Tana is going to be quoted as Rabbi Yehuda, which is not Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, but this is Rabbi Yehuda Bar Eli. Because we know Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi is the editor of the Mishnah, and any Stam Mishnah we assume is most likely in his name. So when the Mishnah actually says Rabbi Yehuda, it's not quoting Rabbi Yehuda, the editor of the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. It's quoting a different Rabbi Yehuda that came before him, who's known as Rabbi Yehuda Bar Eli, who's a contemporary of Shimon Bar Yochai and lots of the other Tanaim, which came before Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, right? So quoting Rabbi Yehuda says a different opinion, different than Rabbi Meir. He says, "Ba'emtza shoyel mipnei hayira." In the middle of a paragraph, yes, we can greet someone because of fear, but only because of fear. You can't greet just because of honor, right? You're honoring Hashem here. You're davening to Hashem. Yes, I have to honor my father, I have to honor my Rebbe, but you're in the middle of davening here, okay? So you only interrupt because you're actually physically afraid, right? That's that second line. But emtza shel mipnei hayira. In the middle, he greets because of fear. Third line, umeshiv mipnei hakavod, and he can respond because of honor, right? If somebody greets you, it's okay to say hi back, but you don't go of your own accord and interrupt what you're doing, right? Just to honor somebody else, because you're honoring Hashem. Okay. Next line, ba prakim, meaning in between the paragraphs. Shoyel mipnei hakavod. So Rabbi Yehuda says you can greet because of honor, meaning your teacher, an elder, a parent, etc. Umeshiv shalom l'chol adam, and he says, and you can respond to a greeting to anybody, even somebody you're not obligated to honor and you're not afraid of. If they greet you and you're ba prakim, you're in between the paragraphs, Rabbi Yehuda says you can respond to anyone. Okay. Now, these days, the actual halacha, the actual way that we conduct ourselves, is a little bit different, and you'll generally see people will nod and smile to each other and not necessarily speak, and there are various reasons for that. We'll talk more about that. Okay. Now, go back over it on your own.